Today we'll be doing the first in a short series of DIY how-to videos, mostly for the newer people in the club. We've got a lot of new members here lately, and we need to kind of go back and cover some of the basics, some of the easy things we can do. Just recently we had our frag swap, and one of the things that came up was, okay, I've got frags, how do I display them? We'll be taking a simple 10-gallon tank. You could use a 4, 8, 3, whatever you'd like to use, and making a simple frag rack for it so that you can display your corals for everybody to see. The first thing we need to do is gather our materials, most importantly our tank. I'll be using a 10-gallon tank I had laying around. You can use anything from a 20 long to a small 3-gallon nano. Do bear in mind this is something you want to be able to set up and tear down in a fairly short period of time, and you don't want it to be too heavy and cumbersome. Second most important thing we're going to need is our light diffuser, or egg crate as a lot of people call it. You can find that at just about any hardware store. It does come in some various colors. I'm just using white. Next we're going to need some sandpaper. I'm using some 200 grit I had laying around. And you also need a set of flush cutters. Basically they're like a set of dikes that are smaller and they've got a smooth back so you don't leave burrs. And to dress it up, your spray painted choice. Krylon Fusion works well with plastics. It's reef safe. We'll start by measuring our tank. Internal dimensions. Remind yourself you want to give a little room so that you can get this to fit down in here around your plastic rim. So we're looking at just under 10 inches and about 19 3/4 inches on the width. We'll take that measurement and we'll take our sheet of light diffuser. Transferring it on the sheet, we'll mark out our 19 3/4 inches using our Sharpie. I start by marking the total length, and I like to keep full squares. And then you'll go back and you'll mark each individual piece of plastic that we're going to cut. After we've got that marked, we'll come over this direction. We're going to mark our 10 inches. And that'll give us the end of our cut. Depending on which way you've measured this and which way you're using the material, you may use that and vice versa. You can go 10 and then 19. 19 and 10 just because of the corner. And again, we're going to go and mark each and every piece. Once you've got it marked, you're ready to get out your flush cutters and cut it out. When you're cutting a piece of light diffuser, take your flush cuts, find where you've marked that you want to cut, keeping it tight. Just a quick snip, snip. Now you'll notice I'm holding these at a little bit of an angle when I'm cutting. The reason is with the way they're designed, that puts it a smooth cut all the way down the length of the material. If you do get a little burr, like there's one right there, just go back in there and trim them off. After you've got all of your base piece cut, you want to set it aside. And then the next thing we want to do is measure the tank again, but this time for the height, how tall we want to make this piece. And in this particular instance, we'll be making this close to 8 inches tall. What I've done, and I've already pre-cut it, is cut out another piece. I made it a total 8-inch height. I've stepped it down for a series of shelves to fit in. So we've got 3 steps. And I've left the tabs on the top. Here's a little trick. You can use these to help lock a project together. So if you'll take a small square, set it inside there, you'll see it leaves some sticking up. Take your flush cuts, go back and cut those tabs off. It'll leave you with a nice smooth piece when you put your pieces together, but it'll still lock it into place so that it's not shifting around on you. If you're one that wants to make this something permanent, that's also a point where you could use it to super glue or epoxy. Now everybody's dimensions are going to be a little different, depends on what size tank you started out with, how high you wanted those shelves to be, and whether or not you wanted them to span the full length of the tank. In my case, I've made it so that I can actually have two shelves, a full flat bottom, and I did span right left the full length of the tank. So at this point, we've got two of these cut out now. We've also cut out our top shelf. You'll notice we left nothing but clean square ends on that all the way around. At the same time, we have cut out our secondary shelf, as well as a base pan to set in the base of our tank. And I've cut out two different height supports. That's to support the center of our second shelf and the center of our top shelf. The next step is to dress up the edges. Though you've got flush cuts, you've made smooth, clean cuts, you don't want to reach in the tank and be running yourself across little sharp edges all the time. So, we're going to take these edges that we've cut off, where all of our little nuts are now, and move the camera so you can see this here. Set our sandpaper up just on a flat surface, and just bring this back and forth across the sandpaper, periodically checking to see how smooth it is. It'll work best if you've got a desktop surface you can work on, because when you get to a point where you've got a step like this, take your sandpaper to the edge of the desk, fold it over the edge, and then you can still get that all the way down. And you want to dress that up for all of your sides that you've cut on and all of your edges, and be careful not to break off any of the teeth you've left to support your shelves and various pieces of your rack. So we've got all of our parts cleaned up, and once again we're ready to paint. I'll be using Krylon Fusion Black. Comes in a number of different colors. It has been proven to be reef safe, and I've used it in my tank a number of times. Now we're going to make light passes, and we're going to have to do it a couple of times. When you've got all of these angles on a piece like this, you're not going to get it all in one pass. So starting at an angle, running across, and then back across the other direction. Get everything going one way real well. We'll let that kind of sit and dry. This is where it comes in handy having your other pieces ready to go. I've already spray painted this one direction. I'll just flip it around the opposite direction. Hit it again. Well, once that dries, I'll turn it yet again so that we can get the other edge, and then turn it again so we can get the back side. Because if you were to look at it right now, you've got black all on one side, and the rest of it is white still. Once you have everything painted, it's time to put it all together. You'll start by setting in your base piece. I've made this one to fit the base of the tank. Next you put in your sides that you've cut to step for your shelves. This is where your interlocking teeth come in handy. If you cut those down like I showed you earlier in the video, the pieces that you left will now lock into the squares in the base. Cut it as tight as I did, you may have to finagle it just a little bit, but it'll get on there. Next we want to install our top shelf. and then our top shelf support. Put in our middle shelf. And put in our middle shelf support. Now you can use the setup just like this, be perfectly stable in most instances. I mean, you're just got frag setting on here, a little water movement, and that's about it. Or, if you would like a little extra security, which I do, grab the handy zip ties, color matched. And you can put a couple of zip ties in, front and back on the sides and on the center support. And this will really lock your project in place. And there you are, your finished product. You've now got your upper shelf, your second shelf, and your lower shelf, and you've left plenty of room at the back, so if you're doing sun corals, low light corals, or things that you want to have shaded away from whatever light you use on your frag display, you can do that. You've got a rack, so you can still have frag plugs, but you can have things that would normally sit in your sand bed at the base, and of course all your high flow highlight will be at the top. Now, depending on what you do for filtration on your frag tank, I usually just run a small hang-on back filter, carbon pad, and that's just about it. It supplies flow for the tank, and it supplies water filtration for an extended frag day, frag demo, so on and so forth. But for something like that, it may be necessary to notch out a spot in the top for a down tube to go behind this to draw water up into that filter. If you do an internal type filter, and I've seen a couple of those are nice, small little corner located, you could put it in the front corner, or you could actually build your rack narrower and leave a space down the side and set it up on the side. As far as lights for these, I've seen a number of different things. I use a 2-bulb T5 HO fixture myself. A lot of people are now going with LEDs. Some people like to run small metal halides. I've seen a couple of the clip-ons like you can get for the nano type aquariums. But it's really whatever floats your boat. And if you go with a really small tank, if you're doing this on a 3-gallon or 4-gallon, you might even consider just running a PC light. You can get some small power compacts. Little 50-50 light on a power compact in a 3 or 4 gallons, plenty of light for your frags. Now you do want to keep in mind that depending on what you put on there for light will help or hinder the pop of colors in your coral. Try to keep it honest. But don't forget, a lot of us do run some actinic on the tank. If you don't have any actinic in your light for your frag rack, your colors may not pop like they do in your own aquarium. I hope you found this useful or inspiring. For those of you that have any questions or comments, feel free to post them in the thread. If you're catching this on YouTube, the website is theseas.org. My screen name is Poetically Dead.